Hello and welcome to the long-awaited new entry to my Sport Essentials series, where I'll be covering every ball released since my last entry in April of 2021, including stuff like the Zen that came out before that but which I haven't covered yet, and I'll also still include the recently lightly restricted and discontinued balls like the Phase 4 and Altered Reality since they're still able to be widely used, though I won't cover the Spectres since it's been hard banned. I'm going to split this one up again by number, a lot of balls to get through, then offer a compilation later for those that don't mind buckling up for the long haul. Also, I do have sport footage for some of these which I'll use if I have it, but once again this series started as a way to highlight and focus on specific balls that I felt were important to have in your bag for sport tournaments, but as there's hundreds of different patterns and several different lane surfaces in addition to countless bowler styles, and since it kept being requested, I decided to just talk about everything. Logistics didn't work out for sport footage for some of these when I filmed the reviews, and some I wouldn't really consider useful or necessary for sport stuff very often to begin with, and especially for the ones that are transition balls or super late block stuff, I can't exactly replicate that myself or get much information out of throwing something like a high road pearl on a fresh sport pattern. Definitely useful for late block action when they get dirty, but hopefully you get what I'm talking about. I use the ranking or placement system most collegiate players use to sort and choose their arsenals. Most are limited to 6 balls apiece for tournaments, so 1 through 5 plus plastic, so I'll discuss each ball here that I haven't covered before, talk about where I think they should land and what their use cases and usability would be in a lower scoring environment, or where the conditions are tougher. Now, if you like the jerseys we're wearing in the videos, Rosdahl 10 gets you 10% off your order at checkout at CoolWick, and if you're in the market for any bowling equipment or supplies, please follow my link in the description to go pick it up at Mart. It really helps me out. Starting with Global, the reality is a 1 ball, no secret there. We're on the 2019 Open Championships doubles and singles pattern, and it's one that I've really been warming up to. In my recent gem review, we'll cover that one next. Also a 1 ball, shocker I know. I had the reality personally rated as the second best of the 3 big ASIMs in the SPI family right now, but as I've gotten a few more games on it, it's broken in nicely and now I carry it quite a bit. The reality is very reminiscent of Storm Sherlock from a handful of years ago. It's surprisingly easy down the lane for how much it hooks and how much it booms. It's extremely versatile from a lane play standpoint, left to right. You can play straighter or get deep. I don't find it to prefer or resist certain zones or angles. Now I think it likes deeper angles better, but on sport patterns you can do more with it from straighter. It responds to speed and hand position changes really well. Some people don't really know what that means, so what that means is that if you get up the back of the ball, some will stand up and go straight while some will still pick up and continue. Now if you get around it, some will just kind of puke while some will stabilize and still react well. Or if you add some tilt, again, some will roll out and give up while some still blend and hit. Sometimes you want that to happen. Sometimes you use a certain ball and intentionally kill it so that you can get the traction you need, but the control down lane. Now the reality isn't a ball that you'd use wanting to kill or tame it down. It's one when you need traction and dynamic ball reaction. It becomes significantly more controllable when you get a few games on it. That was my issue with it early, is that it's just relentless shape and traction. Now it's the same shape but more controllable, and it's been really effective for me. This is a layup 1 ball suggestion. It's like recommending the Zen to someone. It's kind of a can't miss suggestion that makes me look smart, so I'm good with it. Next is the Rotogrip Gem, Nationals pattern again, the latest hook in a box ball, and if you took the reality and made it earlier and smoother, you'd have the Gem. It's also extremely versatile from a number of different angles, but it does give you some of that kill ability. I think the number of things you can do with the Gem actually exceeds the number of things you can do with the reality. The Gem you can get to boom or you can get it to sit. The reality is just going to move, period. And the Gem has raw power while the reality is a little sleeker. It's sexier ball reaction. And I don't really want to say the Gem is more balanced, but it kind of is. I don't get along with the Proton as well as I do these two, but there's not a lot of overlap between the 3 hook monsters we have right now. They all have different shapes, friction responses, kind of their own personalities. This one has a recent enough review that I won't belabor the point. You can go watch the full review that shows a very detailed comparison on 2 different patterns between the reality Gem and Proton physics in case you're trying to decide between the 3. Angel and I both throw the Gem on the 2019 Open Championship singles and doubles pattern in the review. The dark code is a step sideways from the altered reality. It's the same strength, just earlier and smoother. It's quite a bit better out of the box with the new 4K fast finish on it that I'm showing here. Makes it a bit earlier and smoother, and that helps it to be more consistent and control the lane a little better. This is a lot of ball. It's the strongest core for my money in any of the 3 lines right now. The new Defiant LRG core in the gem is close, but the diff and intermediate diff on the dark is higher, so as an aggregate it rolls at least as strong and early as the gem, but the cover strength makes it more dynamic overall. This is still a tiny step down from the gem, reality, and proton physics, but it's such a small amount that you'd have to have a ton of oil to really see it because the shape makes up for what it gives up in dig. Next, we're going to talk the altered reality on the house shot, plus some shots you haven't seen before from Angel. She ended up getting one after the original review. It is, of course, unfortunately affected by the USB-C restrictions, however light they are, so since it's still legal for the vast majority of competition, we're going to talk about it. The altered reality is truly a Pearl reality. It's exactly what you think it is, more length, more shape. The twist is that the cover formula is so strong that while it does get good length and good pop, it also gives you a lot of consistency because it gets more traction in oil, so it blends wet-dry better than a lot of other shiny balls. That's not to say that it blends wet-dry well, or better than something with surface. I'd recommend breaking the shine, of course. Even then, it's still pretty responsive, but it can definitely bridge what can be a big gap between something like a Reality and a UC2 because the UC2 has a lot cleaner cover formula on it. The Altered can be used in a lot of different situations, and I've seen it be useful for a lot of people on the fresh on higher friction lanes. Bigger stuff and or surface ends up being too much, while the weaker covers on the UC2 and RSTX2 need friction or need some lane transition, so the Altered fits perfectly in those situations. It's been especially beneficial for higher rev bowlers who feel trapped when they're forced inside. Stronger stuff is too much, symmetric stuff is too slow, cleaner ASIMs don't start up early enough, the Altered is the perfect answer. The dark code is in the same area code, it's earlier and smoother than the Altered, but it does fit the bill if you're in the rare situation where you can't use your Altered. The Altered is a 1 or 2 ball. With the box surface it's a 2, but if you take it to 2000 or something, there's not a lot of stuff on the market that's stronger, so that's why I put it in the 1 ball spot for this video. Hello and welcome to the second video for my Sport Essentials Collection update. This is of course for the 2 ball spot. If you like the jerseys we're wearing, Rosdahl 10 gets you 10% off your order at CoolWick at checkout. The code is in the description if you just want to copy and paste, plus a link to buy any of your bowling needs at Bowler's Mart. Using that link associates your purchases with me, and that support helps a lot. Let's get into it and talk about the Storm Nova on the house shot. The Nova has a very similar shape and overall look on the lane to the Gem, but it's a solid step down in terms of traction. I also find the Nova to be pretty similar to the Insight, which was unfortunately overlooked and then discontinued just as people were figuring out how good it was. The Nova is all about balance and versatility. It's not super long and flippy, it's not too early and smooth, it's just right in the middle. It's a good balance of shape and traction. It's in a very throwable zone for a lot of people. It's going to be in play in a lot of situations. Now, if I was still just doing pure essentials or stuff that I thought you really needed to have for tougher patterns, the Nova would be on that list. It has a rounder climbing motion, and when it goes to move on friction, it doesn't jump or bounce. It slows down a bit and really stabilizes and rolls through the pocket. This is a ball you can do a lot of things with. You can play straight and jam it, or play a tighter line, or you can open up your angles and cover a lot of boards. It'll let you do virtually anything you want to do or anything you're asked by the lanes to do. When people say control the lane front to back or side to side, what they're talking about is that if you get it a little right or left, it's in that zone where it'll get back if you get it a little wide, or hold if you get it in a little. Controlling the lane front to back means that if you get a little fast or throw a little too hard, it'll still pull up and get there more often, or if you get a little slow, it'll hold on more often. Some balls like the Reality you definitely can't get slow with, and if you miss out, while balls like the Zen Master you just can't get fast with or give too much room. The Nova gives you a lot to work with. It's definitely big on pocket presence, meaning that when they're tough and hitting the pocket is at a premium, this is one of those balls I would put on that list. And it's not just controllable to be controllable like an IQ Tour or something. I'd consider this a scoreable control ball akin to like the original Idol or Phase 2. Nova, I think, is solid 2-ball territory. It could be a 1-ball, I suppose, but it's a definite step down from the balls that we talked about in the 1-ball spot or the 1-ball video. R2X isn't that strong of a cover stock, so I think that keeps it from being a big gun, but the ignition core is really strong, so again, lots of balance, almost a Code Black or Code X kind of feel. Big core, medium cover, nice combination. Next, let's talk about the RSTX2 on the house shot. It's been one of my personal favorites since it came out because it, like the UC2, is in astrophysics territory. A clean and firm but controllable and versatile ball. I think that's where Storm has really succeeded the most. They've made plenty of great solid stuff too, of course, but historically their shiny medium strength covers have been what really sets them apart. They managed to create the clean skid flip motion that people are after while not being as sensitive as you'd expect that type of a ball motion to be. Even the really flippy ones are still pretty round and controllable, which is kind of a unique thing to see and describe. It makes my job easier though, hashtag staffer guy, speaking in contradictions. Sounds like stuff a staffer would say, but anyone that's thrown a shiny Storm Roto or now Global Ball will say the same thing. The X2 feels a lot like an asymmetric high road Pearl. It gets really easy length, almost extra easy length over something like a UC2 that's lower RG, so that revs up pretty strong. The X2 gets almost concerning length, like you want to start spinning your finger to help it wind up before it really gets going, and has a hard arc type of shape. The thing I like about the X2 is that you can close your angles down with it while still getting the ball motion of something like the UC2. The X2 is your prototypical 2-ball, shiny medium strength ASIM that's a solid step down from a bigger sanded solid ASIM once transition sets in. The UFO alert on the house shot is unfortunately another one of the lightly restricted balls. I was looking forward to taking that to nationals this year, but I'll be alright. I can and will still use it everywhere else. The alert was on its way to Phase 2 status because, like the Phase 2, it followed a promising but marginally successful ball and had very little buzz or interest at first until people gradually figured out just how good it was. Many of the pros ranked it among their favorites and still continue to throw it. The alert is a very rolly ball. It's like an asymmetric IQ Emerald. Even, continuous, controlled, managing the lane, much like the Nova that we talked about earlier, it doesn't have any specific outstanding characteristics, meaning that it's not especially early or late, smooth or flippy. A medium strength cover, medium strength core for an ASIM puts it in play for a lot of people on a lot of patterns in several different stages of transition. I've been able to use it on some fresh shots as well as some beaten up patterns, so it's quite versatile. It's not big on really opening up angles unless you have a higher rev rate. Then it's quite helpful because it gives you something to work with, but not too much. Obviously it works quite well for both of us, and though it doesn't see as much use in League, it's one of the first in the bag for tournaments, especially if we don't know what we're getting ourselves into, because it has such a wide coverage and gives us something to work with even if it's maybe not ideal. Solid 2-ball, and like I said with the Nova, if I was still just sticking only to certain balls I thought were better for tougher conditions or situations, this one would also be on that list. Next we'll talk Zen Master. The lane level shots are house and the rest are on the 2019 Open Championships doubles singles pattern. Most of you know my personal feelings, really didn't match up with it myself, one of my bottom 5 all time actually, but since I did the review I've seen it become a two-hander god ball. It takes the Zen idea and pushes it over 9,000. It's stronger, definitely earlier and smoother than the Zen. Most two-handers just don't have higher revs. They also develop higher speed because they have to be able to throw reactive balls. The Zen Master is almost like high-powered urethane. It gives you a ton of dig but a ton of control too, plus the reactive shape and hit that urethane just doesn't have. As a matter of fact, after I finished filming my Sport Gauntlet comparison where I said I gave mine away, I did literally give it away to a buddy who happened to be there. He decided to give it to his son, who is a two-hander, and his son proceeded to shoot 790 in his next high school meet. Shout out to Mason Alvarado. I then started seeing a lot of two-handers doing really well with it, and it's been one of my top recommendations now to two-handers looking for something strong. It allows them to both hit it and throw it hard because it digs in early and then just continues walking up. They can throw it on volume because of the strength, also helps control angles, which is vital on longer and heavier patterns, plus they can throw it on short and medium volume patterns just because of how controllable it is. Now if you're higher rev period, I think you can just throw my opinion out the window on this one. If you're lower rev, it's great at helping you control angles, but it may not give you the necessary shape to be the best choice. However, I've heard from a lot of lower rev people that find themselves stuck because they know they need a urethane type look, but urethane just doesn't fit or work for them. I think the Zen Master might be a great choice to bridge that gap, especially on sport patterns. The ZM is a solid 2-ball for me. I think even big rev rates need more total ball reaction period at the top of their bag, something like the Reality, but it's also strong enough to keep it out of the 3-ball spot. Now I could see someone going like Reality for the 1-ball, then X2 or UC2 in the 2 spot, but the ZM is actually stronger than, or at least as strong as those two, despite being symmetric while those are ASIMs. So even if you have Reality, UC2, Zen Master all together in the same bag, the ZM is 2-ball strong, period. Idle Helios is next on the list, and the buzz has been big, first on House, then on the Nationals pattern. 2 900 series already to its credit. I mean, sure, Cody Schmidt and Steven Casella are okay bowlers, but we all know that the ball does most of the work. That's why the pros are the pros, because they get all the free balls and have all the ball reps, right? Now, thinking that is about as intelligent as dating Amber Heard, but I digress. The easy way to describe the Helios is that it's longer and sharper than the original Idol while retaining the control and adding some extra versatility. I think it's easier to get deeper on the lane with the Helios. The other Idols tend to hit a cliff at about 4th arrow, and the Helios doesn't really resist angle as much as the other Idols. The Idol line has been super successful in large part because of how well they cover the outside of 4th arrow zone, though. It's really like a higher powered line of IQ Tours, or an evolution of them. Stronger but similar rolling core. I've had a lot of success with the whole line thus far, a lot of people have, and that seems to have been elevated even further with the Helios. Very round shaping ball, not as strong as you'd expect though. On paper it's stronger than the Idol, but everyone seems to universally agree that the original feels like it has more dig, or that it's at least earlier and slower. I think this keeps it solidly in 2-ball territory. It's on par with, but offers a different look and shape from the Zen Master in Phase 2, so all these three definitely have hook potential overlap. They're 3 different shapes, have 3 different use cases, and each naturally prefer different zones. No need to have all 3, but I wouldn't worry about having 2 of the 3. Might sound odd for it to contend for the same spot in the bag as an RSTX2. These are wildly different balls, but remember it's about how everything fits together. If you've got an altered Reality as your 1 ball, you would likely want a complement like the Helios. However, if you had the Reality in the top spot, putting the Helios beneath it would be a little redundant. Hello and welcome to the 3rd video for my Sport Essentials Collection update. This is of course for the 3-ball spot. If you like the jerseys we're wearing, Rosdahl 10 gets you 10% off your order at CoolWick at checkout. The code is in the description if you just want to copy and paste, plus a link to buy any of your bowling needs at Bowler's Mart. Using that link associates your purchases with me, and that support helps a lot. Let's start off with the Zen. It came out late 2020, so it's been out for about a year and a half. It was released shortly after the first handful of global balls that were poured once the global manufacturing moved to the Storm plant in Utah. I can't cover earlier global balls such as the Honey Badger Revival and Ordnance C4 because they came out before Storm and Roto staffers were allowed to start throwing global, which happened in January 2021. And by the time I started doing global reviews, those were beyond their window of interest, so I didn't throw some of that stuff. The Zen is a ball I personally haven't really gotten along with, though I recognize why it's been popular and so good for so many people. Matter of fact, the popularity is what made me review it 6 months after it released. It has a very strong and heavy rolling symmetric core, which helps to control the lane both front to back and side to side, plus a medium high strength cover. Strong covers also help blend and control the lane because they're less sensitive to oil, so that means that they aren't as weak in the oil, which consequently makes them less sensitive to the dry. The Zen might be the ultimate jack of all trades ball. I've seen it work well for high rev rates, low rev rates, high speeds, low speeds. It's controllable enough for high rev rates and strong enough for low ones. High rev rates generally don't have issues getting something to hook, but because they're often forced into weaker balls, they can have issues controlling a ball because weaker balls are generally going to be more sensitive. Now, something like the Zen gives them controllable strength that they don't have to add a bunch of surface to blend it out. Conversely, lower rev rates often need stronger balls period to get some kind of ball reaction, but stronger balls can also give them angle issues. Too strong and early from straighter, but as soon as they go to move in, they can't get the ball to corner or hit. The Zen solves all kinds of problems for all kinds of people because of its extremely versatile nature. It doesn't go too far in any one direction. It's an improvement on something like the Marvel Pearl. The Zen is a 2 or 3 ball depending on your game and the conditions. It's still not Zen Master Phase 2 or Idle Helio strong. It's a step down or complement to one of those since you'll likely have at least one ASIM in the top spot, so probably most often a 3 ball. The Zen Soul has yet to release as of making this. I recently released my review video, so I'd encourage you to go check that out. For the short notes here, I'm going to call it a low 2, high 3 ball. It's right on that line. Initial impressions are favorable, and we'll see what happens, but for now the review is linked in the description. Rubicon UC3, lane 15 is house, 32 is the Nationals pattern. The word unique gets thrown around a lot to the point that it begins to lose meaning, but the UC3 is pretty wild. It's an asymmetric urethane ball, and honestly, I have no idea where to put this ball. It is pretty strong. It doesn't quite have the shape of something like the Reality or even the Gem, but the traction is there, so you can use it on heavy stuff, but it isn't nearly as sensitive to lower volumes as regular urethane. People try to throw urethane on dry conditions just because it doesn't shape as much, not because it's necessarily effective, but most traditional urethane is incredibly early. The problem with trying to make urethane that's, quote, longer and stronger is that often it makes it kind of inconsistent and goes against the whole idea of urethane in the first place. So we're talking balls like a Fever Pitch or a Pitch Purple. But with the UC3 being asymmetric, that lets it be a urethane ball, but also adds some shape and torque. It gives you dig when you need dig without being too early, and it gives you shape when you need more punch than a Pitch Black, but not as much as if you would jump into a Nova or something. It's a really wild ball, and I think I have to put it in the 3-ball spot, but depending on your game, it could be higher or lower. This one really has to be experienced to figure out exactly how and where it fits for you. Trend 2 is next, another one of the lightly restricted balls, and this one's tough because there's nothing else out there like it. I've said this since day one. I've doubled and tripled down on that, and those that have thrown a degree. Virtually everything else in the line has a near replacement, or something that's not quite the same, but you could sub it in and be close. The Helios and the Phase 2, the RSTX2 and the UC2, Hustle Camo Burner Solid, Reality and Proton Physics, etc. The T2 has nothing else it bears much similarity to, and every way it could be similar to something is completely offset by another way. Now, unique again doesn't mean good or effective. It's just like any other ball. It might uniquely suck for you, which would make you glad that there's nothing else out there like it. This isn't a ball that sees lane time for me, but that doesn't mean I don't recognize the potential and abilities of the ball, which is a very good tool. I said this in my review too, but the better you are, the better the ball will be. I don't think it's as forgiving as some other balls out there, but it is incredibly versatile. There may be more potential with this ball than any other ball I've thrown, and it's only limited by your limitations. You can zip it down the gutter or loft the gutter on the other side of the lane with equal effectiveness, given the appropriate situation and conditions, of course. You can get it to stop and go straight or pick up and continue. It's pretty clean and angular, medium strength core with a medium to high strength cover, and the combination covers a pretty wide range of conditions. The cover has enough traction to reach up, but the core doesn't get it started super quick, so it can also reach down. I don't feel like it particularly lends itself more to fresher transition conditions. It does fine on both and has merits on both. The Trend 2 is a 3-ball. The cover strength keeps it at a 4-ball territory. It is of course discontinued now, but if you have one, I'm sure you're feeling everything I'm saying. Phase 4 is another in the group with the T2 and the Altered, and while I didn't have as bad of an experience with it as I did with the Zen Master, it's still pretty rough for me. However, Angel couldn't miss with it. Now, my opinion shouldn't really matter when it comes to ball quality anyway. My observations about the reaction should, but I've often had very good things to say about balls that I don't throw, like the T2, while I have bad things to say about balls I absolutely love, like the ProMotion. The T2 doesn't fit my game, but I recognize the quality, while the ProMotion is amazing for me, but is going to be way too slow for some people and just flat out not fit certain conditions or zones on the lane. Anyway, Phase 4, it's quite a bit like the Idle Pearl, a very strong symmetric core with a medium to medium low strength cover. It gives you the roll and stability of a bigger core, but with a tamer cover that will put it in play on a lot of things. It may be the solution for a lighter volume fresh pattern. Core helps control the reaction while the mild cover strength doesn't dig in too early, or it could be good for transition when you're stuck between a stronger ball not getting down the lane or a weaker ball being too sensitive and not spinning up quick enough. There will always be balls like the Phase 4. There's several in all three lines, either a bit above it or a bit below it. X2, UC2, UFO Alert are a step up. Wolverine, High Road, Hyped Pearl are all a step down, but they're all in a very similar place cover strength wise, just variations in core to create different looks within the window of average conditions and bowler styles. These balls will all fit a wide combination of the most common of conditions and bowlers. The Phase 4 is a solid 3-ball, definitely a good ball to have in the middle of the bag. Hello and welcome to the 4th video for my Sport Essentials Collection update, and this one is going to cover both the 4 and 5 ball spot. If you like the jerseys we're wearing, Rosdahl 10 gets you 10% off your order at CoolWick at checkout. The code is in the description if you just want to copy and paste, plus a link to buy any of your bowling needs at Bowler's Mart. Using that link associates your purchases with me, and that support helps a lot. Starting with the Wolverine, again in the same group of lightly restricted balls that I talked about in the previous videos, it's a marginally stronger high road or high road pearl. Same or very similar cover formula, slightly stronger core, so it's earlier and a bit smoother than either of the high roads. This one reminds me more of the Idle Pearl than the P4 does, albeit longer and a bit weaker. It made TV for the pros several times and really fit a gap we've had for a long time. You'd have something like a high road and then go straight to an Idle Pearl or a Trend, so there's a fair-sized gap in core strengths there. The Wolverine and Spectre especially were great answers. It's too bad what happened there, and I'm definitely not getting into that here, but if you have a Wolverine, obviously you can still use it in the vast majority of situations, and I think it's an important reaction to have near the bottom of the bag. I think you can get very close with a high road if you don't have the Wolverine option, but it's a 4-ball for me. It's not at the very bottom of the bag, but it's not really that strong either. This is a medium condition ball, and if you're at like an 8-game sweeper on something like 40 feet and 25 mils, you're going to be looking at this ball for game 6 and beyond most likely. Next we'll talk Hyped Pearl and Hyped Hybrid, and despite the same core, same cover formula, same surface finish, they're two fairly different experiences somehow, so I'm going to tackle them separately, both on house shots, starting with the Hyped Pearl. The Hyped Pearl is a bit longer and sharper than the IQ Emerald, but it's a very familiar experience for Angel, who is an Emerald expert. It's her favorite ball of all time. The Hyped Pearl has a very stable roll, and what I mean by that is that it's even and metered. It doesn't exactly shoot through the fronts, and it doesn't really peel down lane. It's very consistent from front to back, and it combines that with a firm rolling move on the back end. Now once again, this is more insane performance from the HP2 line for the price. I hate saying stuff like that. I really don't enjoy phrases like bang for your buck or value or whatever, because usually that just means what you're buying is cheap crap. But in this case, you're getting an IQ line type of ball for HP2 price, so it just is what it is, and I have to point it out. The Hyped Pearl is a 4-ball. It's a great step down from an IQ Tour and is a great replacement for the Emerald since we don't have it anymore. I think it's actually better at getting left with than the Emerald was. Bit higher RG, bit higher differential as well, so it moves the reaction a little further down the lane, so you get the same idea and feel, but that's maybe more scoreable. Transition ball for sure. They'd have to be pretty dry for you to start off with it. This would be a ball down after you go something like Helios Phase 3, so it'd be a great step down from that when they start getting drier. Now the Hyped Hybrid is most of that, but it seems to roll a fair amount heavier, and while the Pearl is a rounder shape, the Hybrid's more of a gradual arc. The Hybrid reminds me a lot of something like the MVP Pearl going back a couple years, or like the Wrecker going way back. It's this heavy, almost chuggy looking roll, but ends up revving up faster on the back end than the Pearl, with a pretty decisive move down lane. It almost looks like two different balls front to back. For the first 40 feet, it looks like it's just going to ease or settle into the pocket, and you can really see on a couple of these that it slows down quite a bit too. But it slows down and then it's crisp and clean into the pocket. I think I said this in the review too, but it's a staffer's dream to describe because it is clean through the front. It may not rev up in the mid lane per se, but it certainly controls it. Then it slows down, and then it has a pretty strong move down lane. It's not necessarily quick, but it's decisive. The contrast between the two hyped balls makes them both fit in the bag together. I think the Hybrid's a little stronger, definitely slows down faster, and this gives you two different shapes kind of in the same area. It's still a 4-ball, but this is like a perfect step down from the Phase 2, and you want to have that same shape but in something weaker. I'd say that I think you need to break the shine if you have one, and if you haven't had one yet, this ball will now come in the 4K fast finish, so it should be in the perfect place out of the box now. Hustle Wine, Camo, Electrify Solid, Burner Pearl, and Burner Solid all in the house shot, and I'm going to sum these up together because they're fairly similar and fit in a similar place. They're all 5 balls. I think that's a pretty easy one, and I'll start by reiterating like I did when the Electrifies came out. I love having lower end balls that aren't these weak covers with weak cores because those can be somewhat inconsistent. They really fly on friction and just sail in the oil, but having these medium RG low diff cores really helps control and stabilize the roll of the ball, while the covers put them in play on drier conditions. The Wine and Burner Pearl are quite similar in ball roll to the Hyped Pearl. I did a comparison video with the 3 of those that you might want to check out. I have it linked in the description below. The Camo and Burner Solid are somewhat similar, more of an arc, while the E-Solid is marginally stronger and earlier, more of a round shape that's about IQ Tour strength. I also have a comparison video with the 3 of those as well. My thoughts on all those are better seen and expanded upon in those videos rather than the short little synopsis here, so go check out both those comparisons for more details. This concludes my update for the Sport Essentials collection. I have my Sport Essentials playlist linked in the description below that contains stuff I've already covered but that's still in production, such as the high roads. Remember my code Rosdahl10 for 10% off at CoolWick, and my Bowler's Mart link in the description to go get some of this stuff ordered. Thanks for watching, and may the strikes be with you.